It is 12:39. You are listening to the Mid-Morning Talk on Salam Media with Mari Mukonda. Fake news is a term that has come to mean different things to different people. At its core, we are defining fake news as those news stories that are false. The story itself is fabricated with no verifiable facts, sources, or quotes. Sometimes these stories may be propaganda that is intentionally designed to mislead the reader or may be designed as clickbait, written for economic incentives. To give us more information and insight is clinical psychologist practicing at Netcare Akesom Klanga, Kiara Sunder. Good day, Kiara, and thank you for joining me.
Hi there. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, so Kiara, let's get straight into it. What is the science behind fake news?
I think the main thing is that traditionally we used to receive news via, paper. It was always verified. We always had official sources, and that's historically how we have received information over the years. And I think now there's been the surge in digital media and the space of social media where we've seen this space where anybody is able to put anything up and it does not have to be verified per se. And this information goes to a large audience. And this is how it's a mechanism for this fake news to sort of spread.
Mm-hmm. Right now, why do we care or should we care about fake news?
So I think that that's a really good question. I think that as each individual, we should care about fake news because we all have a part to play in it. If
Mm-hmm.
we stop sharing these posts, if we ask ourselves before we share, is it true? Is it verified? And is it necessary? I feel like those three questions are necessary for each of us to ask ourselves before we just click share on any of our feeds, because I think that's how the fake news spreads, and then it creates an overall panic and confusion. And things are already hectic in the world. We're seeing suffering, we're seeing chaos, we're seeing devastation if we just, open up a newspaper or even look online. We don't need to fuel any more panic individually. So I think we all have a role to play and to each be responsible for stopping the spread of it to
Mm-hmm.
limit the overall impact it's having on our mental health as well.
Mm-hmm. And with the advent of social media, it has been really easy to share news amongst the social media platforms, etc. So, how has social media contributed to the spread of fake news?
Yeah, so as I was saying earlier, anyone has access. You just need an account. Sometimes you may not even need an account that's verified, where there's an actual identity behind the name of the account. So I think, generally social media gives us this space where we can upload absolutely anything we want. And I think a lot of people have genuine anxiety where if we see something, we automatically think, okay, if I've seen this, this must be true. That's the thought that automatically comes to mind. And that's when we click share. And that's when it kind of becomes dangerous because the next person sees it and it has a follow on effect. So we also want to stay relevant, the colloquial term of the fear of missing out, FOMO. And
Mm-hmm.
we constantly want to post and say, okay, look, I've found out about this first. So there's this pressure to post first and be the first person in your social media feed that actually shares the story. So it definitely does fuel the panic. Hmm.
And we see with this ideology of FOMO and wanting to be the first person to share news, it also goes where people will now stop helping people on the side that needs help and start taking off their devices to record an event that is taking place or something that is taking place at the moment because of wanting to share
Hmm.
and being the first person on the ground to share the news story. And that has really changed the way we view things and the way we think and act as human beings. Now, how do you determine what is fake news and what isn't?
Yeah, so I think that that's important. We have to always ask ourselves, is there an author behind this story? Can we verify that there is somebody's name to this? Can we also see that this is coming from one of our main news channels, which have a responsibility to produce the, content that is real? We have to check the credibility of the sources that we're using, and before we actually just go ahead and share the story or even tell others about it. So I think credibility is number one with this. Definitely not just taking it at face value. We have to look further before we actually share something.
Mm. For someone who creates fake news and shares it on public platforms for it to be shared, redistributed, etc., what implications is there on that person?
So I think a lot of the time with this the cyberspace that we're talking about, the implications are lost most of the time because
Hmm.
sometimes it goes up and then there's no traceable person per se because it's a chain message or it's been forwarded many times, which we've seen on many social media platforms, that it's very hard to actually single out a user or a person that has started it, and rather it becomes more of a group phenomenon. And then I think you see these movements where people lash out at each other on social media spaces saying, please stop posting about that. And it creates a very negative space on social media where a lot of people are going actually to escape the realities of the day. Going on there is a space to actually just take a step away. And then when you get on there and you actually see more content about the news and about the bad things that are happening in the world, it kind of feeds into this whole the same narrative, and it can be quite negative for our mental health.
I remember when everyone first got smartphones and social media apps, and it was fun getting the chain messages until we started receiving chain messages that didn't make sense, or chain messages that wanted you to keep on spreading them, or else something bad would happen to you. And now our parents are doing that, and we just like, no, don't send us chain messages because it's fake news.
Yes, and this speaks to digital illiteracy. I think with what you're mentioning, um, with our younger people having more experience with technology, where our older people see something and they believe that this must be
Mhm.
true because they haven't had technology around for as long as the younger generation has. And then they hit forward, which is exactly what you're talking about. Not realizing, actually, not knowing that they actually even creating and contributing to this phenomenon. So sometimes it is innocent. And I think that's
Yes.
why it's important that we are aware of it so that we can stop the behavior before it becomes large scale kind of.
Hmm. As parents, we want to protect our children from the dangers of social media, cyberbullying, and also misinformation. How can we do that?
Very, very important one. Hey, I think keeping communication lines open with children is very important. So a lot of the time
Hmm.
we come across young adolescents and children who don't actually understand why my phone is getting taken away, why I'm not allowed to use these sites. So I think a lot of the time they're misinformed, and then it creates resistance from children. So in order to counteract that resistance, having this open line of communication where we as parents say, these are actually the dangers of social media. And yes, there are the pros of social media, but these are the cons. And because of these reasons, these are the parental controls we're setting. So you can limit access to your children as to what social media platforms or what they are doing on the cyberspace. So I think it's very important for the communication aspect overall, just to have that line of communication where even if something is happening, your child feels comfortable enough to come to you and say something so that you can intervene at the earliest possible time. Hmm.
Hmm. Right. While we're on the note about fake news and propaganda, etc., what about satire? Where do we or how do we categorize satire?
So I think satire, I mean, I didn't mention too much about it in the article. I think that comes in with our political sphere, where a lot of you see a lot of the the cartoonists and the comics and things like that bring that in, where there's a message that's still to be sent, but I think it speaks to it in a very indirect way, where they still manage to convey that message, but it's done in a very indirect way.
All right, so it wouldn't necessarily be fake news, but it's just something to entertain people at the same time.
I wouldn't classify it as fake. I mean, I think it falls more under opinion, where each person has their own opinions, and I think that would come through there, where some readers would agree with it and others may disagree, but generally there's some sort of humor or entertainment purpose behind it.
All right, Kiara, going forward, anything that we should take note of before sharing news, whether it's fake or it's legit?
So I think the one big thing which I've also learned about recently is that when we're online, we already have the cyberspace world that's so brilliant, and they have algorithms, is what they call them in technology, where based on what we're searching and based on what we're viewing and what content we're consuming, the algorithms push similar content back to us. So I think that we need to be mindful that, just because we're seeing a lot of whatever is happening and it's coming up on our feed, it does not necessarily mean that, that it's happening in that kind of way where it's so big for us because we're seeing so much of it. So I think to always remember that, these are automated engines and they are sending us a lot of what we are already looking at. So not to fall into the trap of, panicking too much or starting to get all flustered or forwarding it, and I say it goes back to the three questions, is it true? Is it verified? And is this really necessary for me to post?
All right, so thank you so much for your time, Kiara, and for sharing that and unpacking fake news for us. And hopefully our listeners will first verify the news that they receive and go back to the sources and identify whether it's necessary to share it or not. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Kiara Sunder, a clinical psychologist practicing at Netcare Keso in Umhlanga, KZN, taking us through the science behind fake news and the causes of it. We would like to hear your opinions, your thoughts, your comments regarding this, and send them to us via WhatsApp on 061 766 0355. And also, you can leave your comments in the comment section below. Do stay with us. We will be right back.
Would you like to give Sadaka 365 days a year